Hi, my name's Angela Casey and welcome to Edinburgh Outdoors, the podcast that explores Edinburgh's green spaces and the people in them. And today you've got a bit of a bonus episode because I'm meeting a Fringe performer and we're going to play some music, we're going to talk about geology and we're going to talk about Antarctic ice. So it's going to be different and we've got some music at the end for you. And I'm going to welcome to the podcast Steve Garrett. Welcome to Edinburgh Outdoors, Steve.
Good afternoon. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, and we're in Regent Road Park, which is to the east of the city, ever so slightly, just along from the Balmoral and Princes Street. We've got trains in the background, because we're right beside the railway line. And because Steve has a background in geology and geoscience, we're looking at the Stones of Scotland monument, which is really worth a visit. It was created at the time of the Scottish Parliament, and there's a piece of rock from every county from around Scotland.
So there's a couple of things about this, one of which is the stones were weathered, so it's really hard to tell them apart. They kind of look the same.
Yeah.
And then the other thing, it's by the county, so it's by population rather than geology. So a lot of them are the same era, but there's a few interesting ones to point out. So there's the Highland one here. So this is the oldest rock. And it's part of the Lewisian gneiss, which is like the oldest rock in Europe. And that's the oldest bit. That's on Hushnesses on the Isle of Paris, where I was there last year.
Oh, is it?
Visiting Julie Brooke, the artist. Then there's the granites, obviously from Aberdeen and just the Highlands. So that's from after Scotland and England collided. And then the one I like most, actually, is the Moray one here, the Classic Sandstone. And that's an absolutely beautiful quarry in Classic Bay, just lovely exposure of what the desert dunes, actually, 300 million years ago. So
interesting that Orkney sent a very square piece.
Well, Orkney's the red sandstone, so that makes really nice flagstones. It cleaves along really nice flat lines, which is what I think people use for the monuments out there.
Oh, the Western Isles, they've got some lovely pink in them.
Yeah, so that'll be granite, but that's a younger granite from about 60 million years ago when the Atlantic was opening up.
Renfrewshire looks like a good piece of lava, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right, yeah. I would say, that's probably an older Carboniferous lava, a bit like Arthur's Seat and Salisbury Crags that we're looking at up here. But yeah, you can see the rest of them are so weathered, you can't really tell them apart.
Scottish borders. So there's Edinburgh. An interesting concept. I like that they did it.
Yeah, it would help, though, if they were kept cleaner, so you could have kind of, you know, maybe jet washed once in a while, just so you could actually see the original colour of the stone a bit more. There's another piece of geology-related stuff that I really like, very close to here. So the back side of the Scottish Parliament, there's actually a wall at the end of Canongate, and it's got different pieces of Scottish stone with poetry and sayings in it.
And we're sitting... You get a better view in the winter than we do today, but we're sitting looking over Arthur's Seat, where there are a lot of people heading up because it's the middle of the Fringe and the festivals. Have you ever been to the monument before?
Yes, I have. What's interesting about it is because it's sampling a different county, so you get quite a good geological diversity, starting with the oldest rocks in Britain and Europe out the Lewisian gneiss in the Northwest Highlands now to Hebrides. It's 3 billion years old. There's some Carboniferous sandstones from rivers, and then there's some of the younger sands as well, and also sort of red Permo-Triassic sandstones from Ayrshire as well. But that only takes us up to about 300 million years. And so as we sit here in the sun, there's a sort of a gap of about 300 million years between these rocks being laid down, including Arthur's Seat and Salisbury Crags, and today. So that's part of what's in my show, The Song of the Ice, is this concept of deep time, which geologists are used to, but it's really difficult to express.
People who've listened diligently through the podcast, they have heard about deep time because we've been out 3 times with Angus Miller.
Oh, wonderful.
Who you'll know.
Yeah. Angus and the Edinburgh Geological Society and the James Hutton Institute have done an absolute fabulous job on the Hutton Deep Time Trail to Sicker Point this year. So with Angus, I produced Hutton 300, the concert, which was a Greyfriars Kirk at the end of June. We had singer-songwriters, poets, filmmakers, about 7 different acts, and there was a fabulous celebration.
So you're in Edinburgh and you've got a Fringe show coming up.
Yes.
Tell me about it. What's it called, what you're doing, and also how you created it, because it's quite fascinating.
Thank you. The show's called The Song of the Ice, and it's a multimedia presentation for an hour, which tells the story of the Antarctic ice sheet in the core a bit. But also it's a personal story for me, because my first job was in the Antarctic, and I had interesting formative experiences both on boats in the deep field and surveying from aircraft. And then I was able to go back a couple of years ago, so I've seen 40 years of change and witnessed that directly. So I guess there's different sections of the show. The first section introduces my personal experience as a young scientist. I talk a bit about the heroic age of exploration, and then the core of it is The Song of the Ice, which is a 3-part piece of music based on science. And then at the end, there's reflection on change. Each of those sections are accompanied by pieces of music that I've written.
Yeah.
I'm a guitarist as well as a geologist and so on.
And there's photography as well, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So I've got a friend in Aberdeenshire, Chris Bell, who's digitised Kodak Kodachrome 64 slides, which is how we took our photographs 40 years ago. So you take your photographs, put the roll of film in the fridge, post it off and hope it came back okay months later. It's actually a fantastic medium, and the slides look absolutely fabulous, digitised and projected on a really big screen. Antarctic also inspired me to become a landscape watercolour painter, so some of the paintings are featured in the show as well, to really convey the atmosphere of being in the Antarctic and the stillness of it all, accompanied by some of my music. So it just helps everyone slow down a little bit from the absolute manic insanity of the Fringe. It just helps calm things down a bit.
Sounds quite nice. You're very talented. Is there anything else you do? You're giving me quite a list there. It's really impressive.
Well, the show incorporates, as I say, imagery, paintings, music, and storytelling and science. It's trying to bring it all together. This show's evolved for 6 years now, since 2020.
And you've been to the Fringe before, have you?
Yeah, 3 or 4 times.
Right, so you're an old hand.
Just for a couple of shows each year.
Right.
And I've chosen to come back partly because of the venue. It's Mark's on Castle Terrace, which is a church and has beautiful acoustics. But they're also very friendly and very supportive to the performers there. The acoustics are fabulous there.
This is the bit that you need to explain. So the music you've created has been, correct me if I'm wrong, which I will be, you've created it from carbon data from the Antarctic. Is that right?
Yeah, so the central part of the show is The Song of the Ice, which is a 3-part piece. And the first part is actually 180 million years of continental drift, because Antarctica used to be connected to Africa, India, Australia and South America, and a giant continent that was called Gondwana. And that, over 180 million years, that's progressively split up. And in the past 30 or 40 million years, the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere have dropped dramatically, and the circumpolar oceans opened up, and that's allowed the Antarctic ice sheet to form. So it's really the first part of the story of the Antarctic ice sheet is 180 million years of continental drift that allows the ice sheet to form, and we can't comprehend 180 million years. So I've created different pieces of music to represent the different continents, a bit like human culture. So, for example, the India section sounds like a raga, and the Australia section, I use guitar effects and it sounds like a didgeridoo, for example. 180 million years in 5 or 6 minutes. And then the second part is called Grow, and that's the ice sheet growing and moving. And that's accompanied by the sound of ice quakes. It's the ice cracking and groaning, and as the ice moves, it creates little sounds. It's been recorded with geophysical instruments, and my friend Andy Smith had people recording these ice quakes on geophysical data for a number of years, and he always wondered what they sound like. So I took them into a recording studio, Castle Sound in Pencaitland, and the sound engineer looked at me like I'd gone mad. But by the end of the day, we'd actually had something that sounded how people would imagine should sound. Dark, echoey, damp, and creaking all the time. And the third bit is the carbon data bit.
That's the bit Breathe. I don't get. Right.
Another one of my Antarctic friends is Rob Mulvaney, who spent his working life looking at ice cores. And these are drilled down through the ice sheet. And as you drill, there's layers of year by year. You're drilling back in time. And you can capture the individual layers of ice going back 800,000 years, almost like tree rings, I guess. They slice up the ice cores, and there are bubbles of air, and that's the air trapped from millennia ago when the ice was laid down. So they can actually pick out the carbon dioxide signature and the temperature signature going back 800,000 years. It's mind-blowing. So over the past 400,000 years, the carbon dioxide goes between 180 and 280 parts per million. And I looked at that and thought, I thought I could make a tune out of that. And so it's interesting because it stays between 180 and 280 parts per million until we come along. In the past couple of hundred years since the Industrial Revolution, it's now well over 400 parts per million, which is way out of the natural range, and the pace of change is really fast. So the music, the last note of the music is actually much higher, and it's like sending a warning signal. And what surprises me is, having been for that long explanation, this is perhaps the most geeky part of the whole thing, but people react to it really emotionally. And somehow it's evocative to people. Yeah. Because instead of just sampling it so it goes up and down like a wave, I made a tune out of it, and it somehow connects with people. It's quite interesting. So that's Breathe. That's the third section of the Song of the Ice. People ask me, why do you do this? It's partly bringing together the science and the music and the pictures and trying to find new ways to communicate the story of our planet. Scientists are often just communicating to other scientists, to scientific literature or conferences. And it's really important for this work to be communicated in other ways. It's been an explosion, I would say, creative work that's connected to or inspired by earth science. So, for example, Katie Patterson has got the exhibition up on Carlton Hill in the gallery at the top there at the moment called Afterlife. And she's worked collecting geological samples. So Katie's a leading light in this particular field, but musicians and artists, particularly in Edinburgh and Scotland with the Hut and Terse routinary this year, there's just been an explosion of artistic work inspired by geology.
I think it's a really good way of making people absorb something which they keep getting told, and actually bringing it to us as a representation in different ways, I think is quite important. And I think it's quite good because if you're not a scientist, appreciating the science through a medium that you feel connected to, then that's a big positive.
Fabulous to see some of the work where the artists have really taken on this sort of challenge or opportunity enthusiastically and done fabulous work representing geological processes and ideas. So it's not just the scientists pushing, it's a lot of it's the creators pulling, actually.
But what transitioned you from your career into what you're doing now? Because it's obviously so different.
I managed it as a transition. I knew this is what I wanted to do the next stage in life. So I actually released my first solo guitar album in 2015. I've had a few big projects. A couple of years ago, it helped convene a conference down in London called Earth's Canvas, which was exploring geology and creativity. So that was over 100 artists, musicians, filmmakers, poets, writers, on the Joel Sock in London. So that was a big thing.
It's an amazing thing to do.
A couple of years ago as well called A Suitable Stone, which is looking at how geology has influenced the British stones that are used for letter cutting for memorials, gravestones.
And how has it?
Well, that's why I was interested looking at the stones here, because it's only a really small subset of all the stones in Britain that are really good for letter cutting, memorials. And a couple of them here are the Classic sandstone from Moray and also the red sandstone from Ayrshire there. But a lot of them are very good for that purpose. Granite's too hard. And the crystals are too big and variable. And a lot of the other rocks in Scotland are too old and baked and messed up to be useful for this. And you can see that at the Canongate Wall, where some of them are illegible now. So yeah, it's basically the limestones, the Lake District slates, the Welsh slates, and sandstones we're seeing here today. Really good for that, the purpose. So, this year another big project's been doing the 300 concert with the Edinburgh Soccer. That went extremely well.
Yeah.
And interesting, Kareem Polwart asked for a show of hands how many people in the audience were geologists, and it really was the minority.
Yeah.
So this creative work is reaching out to people. It's good.
It's good.
It's good.
It is good. What preparation do you have to do when you're coming to the Fringe? How does that all work?
That's a really good question. Using this year as an example, I would say it's equally divided between getting the show ready and doing all the Fringe registration and publicity. But that all takes time. In terms of preparing the show, again, that's taken many hours of work. And although I had the core of it, which is this 3-part Song of the Ice piece, I've completely rebuilt the storytelling around that. And so 3/4 of the show is really being redone.
You went to the Antarctic to work, and that was 40 years ago. And then you went back just a few years ago.
Yes.
How did you feel when you went back in terms of what you saw and how you felt about it?
It's very different. So when I was there in the early 1980s, I was one of a small group of scientists and support staff employed by the British Antarctic Survey. There were only a few thousand scientists on the whole continent at the time. The bases were very sparse at that time, and we went into the deep field. We were camping with the aircraft, but camping in tents and working out to 86 degrees south. And we're probably the only third or fourth group of people to ever go to these places. So we were a long way from anyone and could only communicate home. Once a month we had 200 words read out of the radio. There was no internet at that time to communicate home. As a tourist now, there's over 100,000 tourists a year go. It can be quite noisy, actually. So on the positive side, though, did manage to get away from the crowds a few times and get some peace and quiet. And you can't help but notice the change on the Antarctic Peninsula. It rains a lot more. It's a lot greener now because of further warming. There's a lot more moss and lichen, and the snow algae and the flowering plants are starting to spread a bit as well. And some of the wildlife is actually doing really well. Humpback whales are back in force. We never saw any 40 years ago. So there are whales everywhere, which is good news. And some of the penguin species are doing really well, like the gentoos, but some aren't. And the sea ice has, in the past few years, almost completely disappeared in the winter. So that's really bad news for some of the species like the emperor penguin. So a lot of change. Contrasting the two, 40 years ago you felt that real sense of isolation. You were like on another world. You were completely cut off, effectively, from normal civilization. And now with Starlink you have instant internet connectivity. Instead of waiting months for my photos to be processed and come back in the post, I could upload them immediately to social media from the ship and share them with people back at home. So it's a completely different experience. And the last day we had there was absolutely beautiful, which I feature in the show, just to remind that despite the change, that beauty is still there. And hopefully through understanding the evolution of the Earth and the ice sheet a bit more, people can generate an affection and understand for the Earth. So anything we do is based on hope rather than climate despair.
I assume your music to a certain extent is uplifting because it's music and people can listen to it on one level, can they?
Yeah, you can still just listen to it as music, definitely. Yeah. To that end, I try not to be too out there. I mean, my background's in jazz, which we have a very bad reputation of playing too many notes. So I try and keep it melodic so it communicates with people more readily.
I see that you worked on the Living Rivers and Glens project. What was that?
So I've noticed on some of your podcasts you ask people when did being outdoors help, and a lockdown for a lot of people was a really key time.
Yeah.
And so what the Living Rivers and Glens project was an invitation for people in Deeside and Donside in Aberdeenshire to go out into the natural environment, record things on their phone through sounds or photographs or poems or even paintings that inspired them when they were out walking on their own, because we had to be on our own. And they were put on a Google Earth map, and then we commissioned a number of composers to write tunes and songs based on the map. So based on what the information people had gathered and put on the map. And that was really successful. we got tremendous feedback that being outdoors and being part of something like this, even though it was a remote project, really helped their mental well-being. And for the creatives, for the composers, it was a really nice project because we had monthly online meetings, so they got to see their mates and colleagues in a structured way which they wouldn't have done otherwise. At the end of that, as well as the Google Earth map, we have pieces of music which are still featuring in the composer's current work. So, for example, Hamish Napier, who's based on Speyside, is just releasing his album The Hill, being outdoors on hills. And so he's got a piece there called The Wells at Dean, which was the Living Rivers at Glens project, but that's featuring in his latest CD, which is coming out at the moment.
It's got a lovely generosity of spirit about him, I think.
Yes, he's a very fine melodic composer
he really
as well.
Is.
Really
he really
good.
is.
And so he does these thematic projects really nicely. So that's an example of what came out of our Living Rivers and Glens.
It's really interesting, and we say this all the time on the podcast, how many people found COVID, obviously we all found it a really difficult time, but how many people also found it a time when something positive came out of it as a result.
But like I say, there's a wonderful example of being outdoors, helping everyone involved, gathering new information and turning it into something creative that's lasted.
And did it help you?
Yeah, absolutely. And to be perfectly candid, my wife had motor neuron disease in the final year of her life, and so it helped me being connected with people and just having something different to focus on for a while.
Yeah. So we ask questions at the end, and we've talked about the outdoors, so I won't ask you that again. But I am going to ask you, where in Edinburgh is your favourite place, outdoors?
It might sound a bit mundane. It's actually Prunsfield Links and the Meadows.
Oh, yes.
And it's close to my flat, and it's lovely because it lets you to get out quickly and easily into space. And you see people, perhaps young people who live in flats and don't have gardens, they come out, and it's beautiful with the cherry blossom in spring, absolutely spectacular. But the lovely views of Arthur Seat and Salisbury Crouch in there. You can enjoy the geology in the hills from a distance.
Yeah. So I'll put details on the show notes of where you're playing and when you're playing, and I'll put a link through to the Fringe programme. But just tell us now, where you're at St Mark's Church.
Yeah, St Mark's Church, and it's 9 shows over 3 weeks, so they're slightly staggered days. The shows are 8:30. It's quite late, but that's because the projection's really important. So it's the last thing for people to do in their fringy day. But as I say, it's an opportunity to slow down and reflect a little bit as well.
Yeah, because the Fringe can be a bit much, and it's very nice to go to something that's much more calming.
This is complimentary, definitely.
Yeah. And you're going to play for us today, aren't you?
Yes,
so
I'd
we're
be
going
very
to have
happy.
a bit of music.
Yeah. So,
thank you for coming and talking to me and bringing your guitar into the park. Somebody might put some money in a hat if you put it out.
I did actually busk during COVID on the Meadows.
Did you?
Yeah, because it was the only way to get to play to anyone. But it was really nice and it was appreciated. So I'll just play the last piece. It's called Polar Farewell. So this is reflecting on the beautiful last day and watching the continent recede as the ship sails north. We're standing on the back deck looking at fade away into the sunset. Quite special.
That's emotional for everybody, leaving something, isn't it? That is.
There we go.
I love that. I bet you don't normally play competing with seagulls and trains, though, do you? If people want to hear it without the trains and the seagulls, all they have to do is come along to St Mark's Church. So thank you very much. That's been really interesting, and I hope that people enjoy listening to the music and also that they come along to your Fringe show.
Thanks very much for the opportunity. It's been a real pleasure sitting in the sun here, talking about rocks and music and Antarctica, and I look forward to seeing you at the show. Thank you. So I played Breathe. So this is the music from Carbon Data that people are interested in.
And as always, thank you for listening to Edinburgh Outdoors. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please rate or review it. And don't forget to tell your friends about it too. And if you know of an outdoor space in or around Edinburgh that might like to be featured, please get in touch.